Upsets, upsets, and more upsets. Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you some of the best college football news, predictions, and analysis. And week 4 may have been the most exciting week of the college football season so far, as we saw 7 teams in the top 25 lose this week, including 5 to unranked opponents. And probably the biggest upset of this entire weekend was number 13 Virginia Tech going on the road and losing to Old Dominion. The Hokies were 29-point favorites going into that game, and a lot of people will say they lost that game because Josh Jackson, the Hokie starting quarterback, got injured in the third quarter. But you have to keep in mind that Old Dominion was battling Virginia Tech throughout the entire game, and they also were playing with their backup quarterback. So being 29-point favorite, even if you lose your quarterback, they still should have been able to take care of business. But the Monarchs won by 14, so that was one of the biggest upsets of the entire year, and Old Dominion's first win ever over a Power 5 program. So congrats to the Old Dominion and their squad over there. We saw number 14 Mississippi State lose to Kentucky, and Benny Snell, their all-star running back for the Wildcats, was all week saying, I can run against any team. I can run against NFL teams. I'm one of the best running backs in the entire nation. He proved it, I believe, scoring every single touchdown for the Wildcats in that 28-7 victory over Mississippi State. So that was a thriller for them, and you can make the case now, is Kentucky the biggest competitor to Georgia in the SEC East? They've already beaten Florida. They beat Mississippi State, a solid competitor out of the West, and they've got a date with Georgia coming up here in a few weeks. And I don't think they're going to beat the Bulldogs, but are they the biggest threat to Georgia in the East, the second best team? Number 15 Oklahoma State lost to Texas Tech in dominating fashion, 41-17. Texas Tech, a team we have trending up. We'll touch on them in a second, but a very gutsy and a very solid performance. That game coming, I believe, on the road against the Cowboys, so even more impressive. Number 17 TCU losing to Texas. Texas back-to-back wins over ranked opponents. They're also back up on our trending up board, so big for them. And then number 23 Boston College losing on the road to Purdue. We made the mistake of changing that prediction. I originally picked Purdue in the summer, changed it to Boston College because of the way things were going, getting nationally ranked. A.J. Dillon was going off, and Purdue was able to shut them down and get their first win of the season. So a very solid performance by the Boilermakers. And the other two teams that lost, of course, were Texas A&M losing to Alabama, understandable there, and then Oregon losing in heartbreaking fashion to Stanford. Had the game in the bag, had it all bottled up, blew, I believe it was a 24-7 lead, but even late in the game, had the game won, fumbled the ball, Stanford drove down, tied it up, won the game in overtime. So a heartbreaking blow to Oregon. That's a loss that we took against the spread, and just on the week straight up as well. We'll touch more on that in a second. First, just a couple things. There's a couple comments to read out. I know some people like this, some people don't. Something that I do occasionally if the time comes. Florida dominated Tennessee this week. We saw some major rivalry games along with some of these upsets. And Cody Horn back in the summer said that the Vols outperformed Florida last year and should have won with one of the worst offenses in Tennessee history. We should win at home in that game. More research is needed. And I love it when people tell me that I need to do more research, because to me it's almost coming off like I just kind of come out here and wing this whole stuff, and that's certainly not the case. Plenty of research goes into this, and obviously you can tell that by our records. Just saying. Connor Lyle said, how on earth could we not be able to beat Florida? They are worse than us. Obviously not this year. Thanks for Tennessee, who are on a trending downward. We'll touch on them in a second, but might have to get worse before they can get better. And then two of my favorites, Chris Farrell, you, sir, should not place any bets on your predictions. And we'll go into more detail on that. But if you come over here and look at our against the spread this week and our overall, I'm making money on my picks, and hopefully you are too. If you're taking our picks and betting on them, congratulations, you're winning. We're 60% correct against the spread, which ain't half bad. So I do place bets on them, and I'm always happy with them. And then my all-time favorite, Joe C. Don't waste your time watching these videos. This guy is no expert. All he does is read off rosters, states the obvious, and offers no insight whatsoever about anything or anybody. Dude, being a journalist major does not make you knowledgeable about anything. Well, at least I am in college, and at least I am getting a major, and I feel like we're fairly knowledgeable on what we're doing over here. Joe C, when he commented that was on our TCU video. He just might be a little salty, a little upset about the way things are going for the Horned Frogs right now, losing back-to-back games to Ohio State and Texas. So those are our comments for the week. Now, this week, 33-7, 82.5%, a very solid week here. Anytime we can go above 80%, we're always happy. Round that up, that's 83%. couple games didn't go our way. Could have been better if we hadn't changed our Boston College pick. Could have been better if Oregon had just held on to that victory. A couple of these other upsets that we didn't see. I didn't see Oklahoma State winning. Didn't see Old Dominion winning. So obviously a couple of those could have gone our way. Could have been a much better week, but hey, that's why we love college football, to see these type of upsets, to see the fun that can go into it. Overall, to date right now, after 4 weeks, 160 and 39. So still less than 50 losses, less than 40 losses, 80.4%. So I don't know, I need to go back and look, but I think we might be around the same or even doing a little bit better than we were at this time last year. So I'm very pleased with that. We might crack 200 wins next week or get very close to it. But like I said, anytime we can stay above 80%, that's always really good. And like I said, the goal is to improve on our 75% winning percentage that we had last year. Against the spread, our best week to date, 7-1, should have been 8-0. The one loss is the Oregon loss. I'm very bitter about that. I'm not an Oregon fan by any means, but I was certainly pulling for them just because I picked them and had them in the spread, and then they blew that game. Stanford was favored, I think, by 1.5 or 2.5, so I took Oregon in that game. And like I said, they had the game in the bag, and they just not fumbled the football. So 7-1 though, 87.5%, round that up, it's 88%, which really was a huge boost to our overall. We're now 33-22, which is right at 60%. So if you're taking our bets, if you're taking our picks, which are out on our Twitter account at Gridiron Expert, you're winning 60% of the time, so you should be making money. Like I said, if you can stay above 500 or right at 500, you're either breaking even or you're making money, and we're doing fairly solid right now. Our goal is to stay above 500 for this season, so not too shabby at 60%. Teams trending up after 4 weeks of college football. First team up, Texas Tech. Absolutely, they deserve it. They have a somewhat pitiful performance against Ole Miss, and within their high-octane offense, who has struggled as of late, only scoring 7 against Alabama, which is understandable, but then allowing Kent State to only hold them to, I think, 38 points, but that game being much closer before that rain delay. So Ole Miss offense needs to start picking it up, but Texas Tech losing that game, but has won 3 straight, including very big wins against Houston and Oklahoma State, obviously winning against the number 15 team in the nation on the road, 41-17, an Oklahoma State team that back in week 3 defeated Boise State in fairly dominating fashion. That's a huge win for Cliff Kingsbury and his team. Alan Bowman, I think Munchie, the guy that our Texas Tech fan that always comments on here, shout out to him. He said he's the real deal, and I couldn't agree more. He has come in here and taken control of this Texas Tech team, done a great job with them. They're 3-1, they're number 25 in the nation, have a huge date with West Virginia in week 5. If they win that, you need to watch out for the Red Raiders in the Big 12. They could be a sneaky dark horse contender, so that's going to be a really fun one to watch. 2 solid quarterbacks and high-octane offenses going at it on Saturday. You got Texas back up on the board. We haven't put them on the trending up, but I had them doing really well when we did our predictions. A lot of people criticized me for that, saying that there's no way they're going to go 10-2 or maybe even 9-3. And after that Maryland loss, I had my doubts, but they haven't lost since that Maryland game. They beat number 22 USC by 23 points, and then they beat number 17 TCU by 15 points. So that's back-to-back wins, double-digit wins over ranked opponents. Yes, both of those were at Texas, but nonetheless, that's a very big performance. Those games weren't close. They took care of their business. Tom Herman has his team going in the right direction. They're 3-1. They're ranked again. They go on the road to Kansas State this week. Then the next week, they face Oklahoma, and that game will be huge. And I do have Texas winning that game as of now. I'm curious to see, though, how they will do against Kansas State, a team that hasn't met all their expectations this season, but it is on the road, and Texas can't afford to overlook that game going into the Oklahoma game. But for right now, Longhorns back up on the trending up board. California, they're in the rankings. I believe they're number 24, somewhere around there. 3-0, Justin Wilcox has done a phenomenal job turning this California program around. I didn't expect them to do much last year, and I've said that over and over again because it just surprised me of how well he did with the Golden Bears last year, getting them to 5-7. And even though they didn't make a bowl game, I was impressed with the performance and the job that he did. They're 3-0 now. They've beaten North Carolina. They beat BYU, who beat Wisconsin, so a solid win there. They've got a solid resume. Had a bye week last week, and they're going into this week 5 with a game at home against Oregon. And that's a huge Pac-12 showdown because Oregon still has a chance to make some noise in the Pac-12, but they won't be able to do that. They lose to a very, very solid California team who I expected a lot out of Ross Bowers this year, and he's not even their quarterback. You've got Chase Garbers coming in at quarterback for the Golden Bears and doing a great job for them. So obviously that's a coaching call there. Obviously has been the right one. California is certainly trending up and will be trending up even more if they get the win over still a nationally ranked Oregon team in Justin Herbert. And then Virginia, a team that I didn't have a lot of high expectations for. The schedule is going to start getting tough for them, but they're 3-1 right now. Their lone loss coming by 4 points to Indiana, a decent team there. So so not too bad of a loss. They beat Louisville this past week by 24 points, and Louisville trending down. We'll touch on them in a second. But their next 3 games are against North Carolina State, Miami, and Duke. So if they can just win, I think, one of those, if 2 would be great, but just one of those, they're still going in the right direction, could get back to a bowl game, much like they did last year. Bronco Mendenhall doing a phenomenal job. And like California, I'm very impressed with the quarterback play because Virginia lost their star quarterback in Kurt Benkert, and then you bring in Bryce Perkins, who last week against Louisville was the leading passer for the Cavaliers and also their leading rusher. So I've been very impressed with the job that he's been doing, and very impressed with the Cavaliers overall. So if they get a win next week against North Carolina State, they'll be 4-1, and like these other teams, will continue to be trending up and looking at potentially getting back to a bowl game. Now the worst part, teams trending down. Unfortunately, I have to put Rutgers up here. Rutgers, a team that we thought we would see a lot of improvement from this year. Maybe not getting to bowl eligibility, but at least making some steps in the right direction under Chris Ash, where they lost by 49 to Ohio State, lost by 41 to Kansas, and then last week they lost by 29 to Buffalo. And that's a game you just have to win. You've got to win those games against those group of 5 teams. So, I mean, we see upsets like that all the time, but you've got to try to take advantage of those opportunities. They could be 2-2 right now. Had they beaten Buffalo, they wouldn't be trending down, but unfortunately they did. They're 1-3, and things aren't going to get any easier as they really start to hit the bulk of Big Ten play. So unfortunately, Rutgers certainly trending down. Looks like it could be another long year for them. Louisville continuing to trend down. I like Bobby Petrino as a coach. I've been a fan of his play style, of his coaching style, over the course of his entire college career. His first stint at Louisville, when he was at Arkansas, now back at Louisville, but you really can see how bad the absence of Lamar Jackson has hurt this Cardinals offense, only managing 3 points. The most points they've scored this season is 31 against Indiana State. 2 weeks ago, they had to have a come-from-behind victory over a very weak Western Kentucky team. They're 2-2 right now, I believe that is correct, but they're still struggling. Their lone losses to Virginia and Alabama. Alabama, understandable, but they're struggling on the offensive side of the ball. They've got to start finding answers, and like I said, things are going to get easier as the bulk of conference play starts to pick up. Mustering only 3 points against Virginia, not a very impressive showing. So Louisville has a lot of things they need to figure out. Sticking in the ACC, we've got Georgia Tech, who has had 3 straight losses since their season opening victory. They've lost to South Florida, they've lost to Pittsburgh, and then they lost to Clemson. The Clemson game, understandable, and they are one of the top teams in the nation, one of the top 4 teams in the nation. But Pittsburgh and South Florida are games that they could have won. The Pittsburgh game being very close. South Florida, I believe the Bulls really winning that game because of their special teams and those 2 kickoff returns they had in that game. But Georgia Tech, things they've got to figure out. These are teams that are still these are teams that are still in the hunt for bowl games. But they're struggling right now, and it's never good to start struggling at the beginning. You don't want to put yourself in a must-win situation down the stretch to try to get into a bowl game or try to get some tiebreakers going. And then Tennessee, who we addressed a little earlier, getting just beaten down by their rival Florida at Neyland Stadium. They're only 2-2. Usually teams that are about 500 or even above that aren't always trending down, but I've got them here just because of what's coming ahead. Their 2 losses to West Virginia and Florida, both been by 26 points. The next 3 games for them in order are Georgia, Auburn, and Alabama. So like I said earlier, things for the Volunteers are going to get worse before they're going to get better. I think they're going to lose those 3 games. But then, that back half of the season, they have a chance to really start picking up some wins and maybe make a bowl game. But Kentucky's getting better, and a lot of people criticize me for, I think, having them losing to Kentucky. But Kentucky, a nationally ranked team, number 17, a huge performance against Mississippi State last week. Missouri, a very dangerous offense. Vanderbilt, a team that didn't perform well against South Carolina, but still has a little bit of talent that could compete against the Volunteers. So Tennessee, yes, I have them trending down, and they had 6 turnovers against Florida last week. So I have them trending down there. Anytime you have that many turnovers, you really probably shouldn't be trending up. So Tennessee and Jeremy Pruitt still have a lot of work to do, as do a lot of these new head coaches across the nation. But right now, we have them trending down. So this is our Week 4 recap. Get ready for Week 5. Our preview video is going to be coming out later on this week. Stay tuned on Twitter and here on YouTube for potential shout-outs about live streams. Any extra news coming there. Check the descriptions for links to the Twitter, links to the predictive site where we'll be doing some extra content there. But right now, a very solid start to the season as we're about a third of the way through, and hopefully things will continue to improve as the season goes on. So as always, go check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert, and always here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on the Gridiron Expert.